In part 2, I talked about contracts between European slave traders and African representatives on the Gold Coast in what is now the nation of Ghana. These contracts are often referred to as slave contracts, despite enslaved captives never being mentioned in them. So how did Europeans and Africans come to agreements about the captives sold into American slavery? Like with everything, it's complicated. Those who say things like they sold their own are selling you a lie. Who sold who depended on power. While early 18th century West Africans were able to demand great flexibility from their European trading partners, outright refusal to trade was not a possibility. Coastal African groups that did not have agreements with Europeans usually ended up targeted by these Europeans and their African allies for enslavement. This was because of the European slave trading forts built along the coast. Contracts often specified that Europeans had to let their African allies into the fort for safety during times of war or raids, and that Europeans had to use their ships, cannons, and arms to protect their African allies. In return, the African allies would help the European companies wage war against their competitors in Africa. Because of this, most coastal West African leaders understood that they only had 4 equally poor and dangerous options. They could cooperate with European traders, they could pretend to cooperate and then obstruct the trade, they could abandon their homes and flee, or they could resist and risk being captured by a more powerful force and then sold. For Africans who worked in the slave trade, we should look at the options they had available to them. People make good choices when they have good choices to make. The 18th century Atlantic slave trade was designed specifically to remove most good choices. Stay tuned for part 4.